Welcome, Power fans. We are back to cover episode 307 entitled Deal or No Deal. The season is running along very quickly. We're up to episode 7. Just before we begin, if you like the content, please subscribe. We'll be covering every single Power episode. We've done so far this season. Feel free to check back any of our previous discussions and also check back here every single day after midnight, right after the episode ends, roughly around about 1 a.m. Eastern time. So let's get right to it with this episode. The whole idea of deal or no deal, the classroom discussions always kind of give us an idea of where the episode is going, what is the big debate that's going on. And the big debate is whether there are true deals, equal deals in this capitalist society that we now live in. The power dynamics are not always completely there, they're never completely equal. So if they're not equal, is anyone dealing with each other on fair ground as far as how these deals are, or all these deals just being done for self-preservation? And I think we see right off the bat that self-preservation is the main idea going on here, especially with Monet. Monet has kind of boxed herself in, as she's always been doing these last couple episodes, starting with Lorenzo's murder that she engineered. Now the Russians are at their neck. They are hitting their supply lines, and that's preventing them from moving product. So Monet is desperate. She goes to Gordo, the only other person she's brought in on this conspiracy, and tells him he needs to back off of Drew because that's putting him in danger now that the Russians are gunning for him based on what he did, that murder he committed. Gordo says, I'm not doing it. I'm going to see Drew as much as I want to. And he holds over her head the big secret of knowing about her being the one that engineered Lorenzo's murder. Gordo didn't really think this through. When it comes to treachery, Monet is loyal to no one except her children, at least at this point. We know back in the early episodes, she had no problems putting a gun in front of in front of Kane's face. So even that loyalty is kind of strained. So Gordo pretty much overplayed his hand here. He became expendable, and Monet had no problem setting him up, being that he's the only person that knows about the conspiracy, as far as we know. We don't know about Evelyn Castillo yet, as far as how much she knows. So she has no problem setting him up. She brings in Kai, the one being the young guy that has this infatuation with her, sets him up in it as well, and plays with the cell phones to make it look like they both engineered Lorenzo's murder. Key thing to keep in mind about that, look at Kane's face right here. Kane is not buying it. He's going to do some more digging. It's a little bit too convenient for him. So I'm banking on him to be the one that finds out this conspiracy that Monet has put in motion. But then after he finds it out, who's going to believe him? That's one thing I've been thinking about. Drew, at this point, he's a broken man. I don't think he's going to want to hear anything about Monet. Diana is still my wild card. In my last recap, I said, being that she was the one closest to Lorenzo, being the daddy's girl, she might be the one to actually end up taking out Monet once she finds out the truth. And Lorenzo already kind of predicted the outcome as far as saying the children will never forgive her once they find out what she did. Now, would that mean just exile, or is that going to be flat out murder? I can see Diana doing it, but she has bigger problems at this point. So let's stick with Monet for a little bit. I talked about Evelyn a little bit earlier. I don't know what Gordo told her, if anything, about Lorenzo being the one that killed their Uncle Frank. Remember that Monet came to Evelyn first and told her about Lorenzo being the one that allegedly killed her Uncle Frank to try and bring her in on the conspiracy. Evelyn wasn't going for it. Now that Gordo is gone, I think she's going to be able to put two and two together. If she hasn't already done so, because we don't know if Gordo told her everything about what he knew about what Monet told him. So at this point, with her son being killed, um, her husband being killed, she's going to know all this is coming from Monet and also the Russians. Are the Russians going to be at their neck? We don't know that either. But Gordo was the only one that was holding back the rest of the Castillos from pretty much going to war with the Tejadas. They at the very least wanted 50-50. The Tejadas weren't willing to do that. The only one that's willing to work with them is now gone. The rest of the Castillos are out for blood. So now I don't know if they really calculated that. Now I'm expecting them to want revenge and also figure out that Gordo was taken out by Drew. I don't think they're going to look at the Russians because who else is going to be in on this? So they may go to the Russians and find out from the Russians directly that they had nothing to do with Gordo's death. So this is something to really keep in mind. I think Evelyn's going to really be out for revenge, having lost her son and also having lost her husband due to Monet's treachery and back dealings. So I don't still see Monet making it through the end of the season, particularly with Kane wanting to take that crown. So something to keep in mind. I'm seeing Kane as being the one in the leadership position, and I see that Monet has been doing too much back dealing, kind of similar to what we saw with Stringer Bell if you ever saw The Wire. There's too much going on, too much back dealing. It's all going to come crashing in on her. She's not as smart as she thinks she is. So we'll see what happens with Monet. Next up would be Tariq as far as deals going. Tariq's main deal is trying to find out the information on this RICO. So that means getting as much information as he can from Lauren. Now, Lauren said something at the beginning that really rang true. I don't think she realized it, but she said to Tariq, "You're only out for yourself and you don't really care about anyone. You're willing to manipulate anyone as best you can to get what you need." But even after she said that, she starts wanting to see the good in Tariq, honestly. She has feelings for him. He's really her only link to the outside world, too. And he's the only one that's showing genuine interest in her. So he's working on her constantly every day with these text messages. I care about you. I want to see you get your old life back. I want us both to get our old lives back, but we need to work together. If Lauren really thought this through, she would have to realize that there is no old life anymore. There is no going backwards. After what happened at this point, all that is dead. But she's holding on to that hope and she wants to believe Tariq. And Tariq does something that kind of gives him a trump card. He goes to see Effie. They have this blow up. Unbeknownst to her, he's recording everything. So now he has her on tape admitting that she killed Lauren. So that's a trump card for the RICO if he ever needs to do any dealings with Saxe or Jenny. He has that admission that he can give to them to get them off his back if need be. Because I believe that RICO is going to blow up. And at that point, Jenny and Saxe are going to be trying to salvage anything. And at that point, it's just going to be, we'll take this information just to salvage a little bit of the investigation, even if we can't get Tariq or Monet directly. But this to me also shows that Tariq doesn't really care about Lauren. He's really just trying to get the information that he needs to stop this RICO or get himself out of the RICO. But Lauren doesn't see that yet. She's still slowly getting pulled back into the web. Um, this goes back to what I said before about what does Tariq see Lauren as? Is Lauren his Angela? I think that's how he sees her. He looks at her as a civilian and kind of a way out, so to speak. But she's still a means to an end. I don't really see genuine love there at this point. That's where it's a little different. I think Ghost truly did love Angela, as he said, as he told his wife, I lost the love of my life. But I don't think he really loves Lauren like that yet. But that's the closest that he has to an Angela type figure. And Effie is, of course, kind of his Tasha at this point. They're completely at odds, and he has no compunction about throwing her under the bus. He's basically putting her directly in line to this RICO if he drops that tape on them. So, but Tariq has been doing a lot of things smart at this point. He was the one that came up with the idea to send the information to Tate to get the Russians caught up in that drug bust. That gets the Russians off of the Tejadas back, and that gives Monet the room to make an alliance with them or make a truce at the very least. So Tariq put all that in motion. So at least he knows he has Monet's complete trust at this point. She basically said, "You're my brains. You're the brains of this operation." So at any point, if that RICO gets too hot, it'll be interesting to see because at that flow chart, they had Tariq and Monet at the top. So if it comes down to it, I don't think Tariq is going to have any apprehension about shifting the blame completely to Monet if that gets him out of harm's way. So we have to keep that in mind as well. One other thing is that Monet now knows about how strong Noma is with this cartel operation. This is her first time seeing how much weight they need to move. So I'm wondering how she's going to play that as well. This is the first time she's seeing somebody that she really can't deal with per se, and she's relying on Kane to make sure all that weight gets moved. But I'm waiting to see that first interaction between Noma and Monet. Well, on one hand, I'm kind of like real, recognize real. Maybe they'll have an understanding, But I don't think so. Women at the top or anybody at the top always clashes. So I'm wondering if Monet is going, or excuse me, Noma is going to see Monet as a threat or vice versa. So really waiting for that. We only have about 3 more episodes. They have to have a confrontation at some point. We'll see where that goes. Next up would be Diana. This is probably my favorite moment of the episode. Basically, Diana exposing Salim in 4K. Even though she did it in private, she basically broke down his entire life. I think all of us have really not brought his whole, I won't even call it a hotep, just his whole righteous act. And him doing that spoken word poem just kind of brought it home. Number one, spoken word, he's about 15, 20 years too late. He needed some 808s behind that, rhyme or whatever he was trying to do. Diana wasn't feeling it whatsoever. And when they had the confrontation afterwards, she was right on point. It wasn't a genuine apology. It was really self-serving for your ego. Look how he came at her. When she didn't receive it, he was like, why didn't you acknowledge me? It was all about him and all about the theatrics of making a presentation. There was nothing genuine about that apology. But here's the thing I'll say about Salim. A lot of what he was saying, it was true about this drug life and what Diana was doing, selling the drugs on campus, but everything is about your delivery. He comes off as too self-righteous. And when you find out what he was hiding, being a trust fund baby of some MAGA parents, it really shows how far gone he is as far as delusion. You can't be coming at people like that when you got your own dirt, number one. So Diana did completely right, exposing everything, holding it over his head, and basically saying, this is the deal that we're going to have. You're going to back off and leave me alone, and I'll keep your secrets. But here's one thing. I think she pushed maybe a little bit too far as stating that you're going to pull back your role in the candy shop because that was his whole identity. Being there, being seen, being felt like he's an advocate to those less privileged than him. So by taking that away, he doesn't have anything. And you remember what he said before, I know you're selling drugs and I'm going to find out some type of proof. I'm thinking by the fact that she pushed him so badly or emasculated him so badly. I think he was the one that went to the cops and dropped his dime as far as her drug dealing. And then we see at the end of the episode, she gets roped up and she gets arrested. Now we're going to see if Diana can stand tall. She said earlier, you taught me everything I know, talking about Monet, but she seemed pretty shook when she was getting pushed to that station. So we're going to see if she's going to be able to stand tall. But here's the other thing. Now that she's in the system, now that she's being held, we don't know where. I'm wondering if she's going to find out that Lauren is still alive some type of way. That's the key thing because we do know that Tariq, based on his meeting with Lauren, he knows that Saxe is the mole now. So I'm thinking Tariq can go about this two ways. He can either put the mechanisms in motion to get Saxe killed, or he can be smarter and use Saxe as his own mole, kind of his reverse mole, which I think he's going to do. Because remember, Whitman got killed earlier. He's too hot out here to drop another body, at least on the police side, or anybody affiliated with him drop a body on their side. But I think he can twist it to have Saxe feeding information back to him. And then by that way, maybe get Lauren out of this whole RICO investigation. But between flipping Saxe, I think that's how Diana might get flipped in or roped in and find out that Lauren is still alive. If she finds out that Lauren is still, and if Diana finds out that Lauren is still alive, how is she going to take that? Because now her and Tariq are sleeping with each other. So now it's a deeper bond here, especially on Diana's part. Is she going to feel like Lauren is a threat? That's the thing that we need to keep an eye out for. So, and then if she feels that Lauren is a threat or if Tariq isn't being completely honest with her, does she flip and go into the RICO as well with Jenny and Blanca? So keep an eye on that. We'll have to see where that goes. The final thing I want to cover really quick is Kane and the inroads that he's making with Effie. Took him long enough. The Effie finally gave him a smile. He doesn't know about the smile, but I think he knows that he's getting in there. Initially, she wouldn't take the tuition money. Effie just wants to do everything on her own. She's very distrustful of, I think, men in general, but definitely after what Tariq did to her, she doesn't really trust anybody. But the way Kane went about it, he pushed a little too hard initially, where he said, "Oh, I'm not going to miss the money." because Effie does not want to feel like a charity case. But after she kept pushing back and cursing him in the text, and he's still being sweet to her, the armor is slowly starting to fall off. So when she finally falls in with Kane and sleeps with him, he's going to have her complete trust, and he's going to have the right hand man or right hand woman that he's been looking for, because she has, the heart and the ability to kill just like he has. So he knows he can completely trust and respect her. And that spells trouble for Tariq, because already Kane doesn't really like Tariq just because he was in the way of him getting with Effie. But he's looking for ways to push Tariq out of the business if he can. So with him and Effie being vengeful, of course, because she got screwed over, she may reveal the information about Noma to Kane first, as far as knowing that child that Noma has in New York. And that's the one trump card that Tariq has to try and get out of the business and escape. So if she gives that information over to Kane first, Tariq is really screwed. So we'll see where that goes. Last thing, I know I said last thing, but we forgot about our boy Brayden. Brayden, too much pillow talking. He finds out that Kiki is not, the one for him, or does not love him. She's there, like she told him from the beginning. She said, as long as you got the money coming, I'm with you. So he got it a little twisted, thought Kiki was just his girl. But they've been watching him since he came at Weston, which was smart. You came in hot off of a drug trial or being exposed for selling drugs on campus and getting kicked off of campus. Of course, they got to watch you. And right under their noses, you start this new drug selling business. And Kiki was wise to that from the beginning. Now, Brayden has found out that this whole company, Weston Holdings, is a giant Ponzi scheme. They have different books, and everything that you're doing is illegal activity, which is funny because you saw his father was so up in arms about Tariq being there. But as we've been hearing from the beginning, the biggest criminals are at Wall Street. So now what does Brayden do? He knows this company is completely dirty, but at the same time, he can't expose anything because his uncle Lucas knows about the drug selling that he's doing there. So everything is tied up in there together. The only out I can see is when he eventually confides in Tariq, which he will do because he has no one to turn to and he's heartbroken. Tariq is going to funnel that some way to RSJ, the richest black man in America. How RSJ uses that, I don't know, because we still don't know if RSJ is corrupt in some type of way. I'm leaning towards he has to be that rich, but we'll see. I think that's Brayden's only out, is going back to Tariq, because he has no one to turn to at this point. All right, so that recaps episode 7, Deal or No Deal. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Monet is going to make it to the end of the season? Does Kane take the Tejada family crown, or will it be Drew? And is she going to stand tall in prison? That's a big thing. We're going to wait and see. And is Lauren going to fall completely head over heels, trusting Tariq? It seems like she is at this point because she has the evidence of what Effie said about her, but I don't know yet. I think she still has a little bit of apprehension, but the layers are pretty much completely fallen, or almost completely fallen at this point. So we'll be back to cover episode 8 next week, uh, airing right after midnight. So our review is going to go up right around 1 a.m., recapping the entire episode. We'll do that for episodes 8, 9, and 10 to close out the season. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on this episode. Take care and see you next week.